Hi, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about my top 10 books of 2025. I love making this video. I love reflecting back on my year and talking about my best books. It wasn't a great reading year for me. In fact, it was been the worst reading year I've had since I've started tracking books as an adult girly, so post-college. I only read 60 books this year, which for me is way down. I really try to hit 100 every year, and there have been a few years in years past where I've hit 150. Out of those 60 books, I've hand-selected my top 10. They range almost every genre. I love reading in almost any genre, and I'm glad I have favorites from a bunch of different places. So let's jump in. These are ranked. Okay, I know some people will just give you a list of their favorites. I sat down, did the hard work of putting these in order from spot 10 to spot number 1. Let's start with number 10. In 10th place was the book You Again by Kate Goldbeck. Now, this was a book that came out in 2023, and I feel was actually on a lot of people's favorites list that year. But the way it was always pitched to me wasn't super appealing. It was always pitched to me as, one, a Harry Met Sally retelling. I've never seen that movie. And also two terrible people falling in love. And I was like, ew, two terrible people, which I don't know why that was my reaction, because I love Nesta Archeron. So clearly I like a girl that's a little terrible. But this book just that didn't sound appealing to me. But when I actually dove into it, I absolutely ate up this contemporary romance. It is following these two people who, when they first meet each other, they do indeed hate each other. And then they meet again years later. Both of them have gone through bad breakups, and they wind up striking up a friendship. And they meet a few times and are enemies. And actually, I find this highly relatable. There have been on multiple occasions friends of friends who, when I initially meet them, we hate each other. The vibes are terrible, negative, not into it. And then we meet again, we're forced to interact because they're friends of friends. And wouldn't you know it, a few interactions later, we're the best of friends. This is something that happens to me as someone who has, who can be a little standoffish when I first meet people. Okay, I'm a little shy. I know maybe it's hard to believe because I love yapping, because I am a Leo at my heart, but I'm also an Enneagram 5, which means new people, I'm why are you asking me questions? Do you work for the CIA? And I think that can be off-putting initially to people. But I do grow on people. I do grow. Anyway, so I think there's a similar dynamic here. It is following these two. They live in New York City. They are messy people. I wouldn't say they're terrible. They're just kind of messy. They don't make perfect choices, but they're really interesting. It is so beautifully written. It is funny and heartwarming, and I just absolutely ate it up. It was such a delight and so different, I think, than a lot of the romances we get with these sparkly type A girlies. I feel the sparkly type A burnout gifted kid is what we normally kind of see from these romance books, and our girly was just messy. She was just a little bit of a mess in a very endearing way. Next up is another romance. Of course, no list would be complete on my channel without Miss Emily Henry herself. I know this wasn't a lot of people's favorite books, but I actually really enjoyed Great Big Beautiful Life, Emily Henry's latest release. It is her least romantic of all of her books. I would almost say this one is just more general fiction. We are following a romance. Also following this kind of historical timeline. The premise is we're following these two writers who are brought to this remote island off the coast of Georgia to compete over this famous heiress who's kind of vanished. The rights to write her memoir. Both of them want to write her autobiography, her memoir, and they're fighting for the opportunity to do so. She's giving them both access to her story and seeing what they come up with in this short time period. I think they're there for about a month, and they wind up striking up a romance at the same time. So we're hearing Margaret, this young woman, or I guess she's not a young woman, we're hearing Margaret's story as she kind of talks about what it was like. Her family was a media mogul essentially, and her life story. And then we're also following these two who are very different and kind of an unlikely duo as they spend a lot of time together because it's a small island. There's not a lot to do. And it reminded me a lot of Beach Read, which is my absolute favorite Emily Henry. I think I've said it before, but it almost felt to me that January and Gus decided to do a little long-term role play situation in order to come to this island. I mean, they're not exactly the same as Gus and January by any means, but there is a lot of similarities, and that being my favorite, I was like happy to see those similarities. I deeply, deeply enjoyed this. It was like Emily Henry with like a sprinkling of Taylor Jenkins Reid sprinkled in there. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid. I really enjoyed the past storyline from Margaret. I think that was a lot of people's complaints, is like they were bored by her story, but I loved it. I think I may have liked Margaret's story even more than the romance, and I think that's why I enjoyed this one so very much. Number 8, just completely switching genres, my only horror on this list and my only YA. I read The Invocations by Crystal Sutherland. Crystal Sutherland wrote The House of Hollow, which is one of my favorite books of all time. She writes these really interesting, like, girl-centered horror that is just like perfect and delicious. Like, it is exactly the type of horror I would be reading. This one to me almost read like The Diviners by Libba Bray meets Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We are following these like 3 young women. I think they're like in their teens. I think this is because it's YA. I think they all are teenagers, and they are trying to like track down this murderer. And we are involved. Well, all of these women are involved in various ways with witchcraft. And witchcraft in this world is like very dark and is connected to like demons. And you, in order to like write these spells, you have to like make a deal with a demon and give them a piece of your soul, and it's like very dark. There's pieces that are like very gross, very like toxic. We're dealing with this, like, one of the girls is like the child of like a billionaire family, and we're evolving around that. One of them, sister, has gone missing and thinks it might be connected to the string of murders. One of them has lost like their whole family in these like witch hunts. Fascinating. The friendship, the unlikely friendship, because these girls come from like very different worlds, and the way in which they like come together as like friends is so delightful. I loved it so much. It was just like the perfect blend of like social commentary and just like a good spooky little time. Would highly recommend. In 7th place, we have Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. This book has been pitched by V. Schwab over and over again as toxic lesbian vampires. We are following 3 women over the course of many, many centuries. Obviously, vampires. And so there's like almost a historical fiction element to this. Our first girlie we start with in 15th century Spain, and we do lots of traveling both across time and across the world. I absolutely love this. One, it is so just like beautifully written, and I felt like it was such an interesting and thoughtful exploration of like female rage and revenge and justice and what that looks like on this like scale or stretching across time. And I thought it was like such a compelling examination of female rage, because at once I think it delves into kind of how often it is like quite justified. These women are often placed in positions in which they are like meant to be victims, and the way they reclaim their power in those situations is fascinating. But we also see the toll that sort of life takes on these women and how it like corrupts them, and I thought it was fascinating. It is very much like a wander. Like, there's not a very clear plot structure from the beginning. Like, you're just kind of like following these women. And so I think if you like really like a like plot focused novel, and I would say typically I do, but I was like okay with it here, I don't know, I would not recommend this book. My mom read it and she really didn't like it. My sister read it and she was absolutely obsessed with it. So like, it definitely is like a wide spectrum. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this to everyone. I think if you like historical, if you like a character study, this is a great book for you. Or if you want kind of like a mission that they're on throughout the book, then maybe skip this one. But the writing is absolutely gorgeous. V. Schwab is so incredibly talented. I loved it so much, and I like need to get into V. Schwab's backlist. I've only read Addie LaRue in this, and like every time I read something from her, I'm like, I need to read more. I need to be getting, she has a lot of books out. Why haven't I read some of the backlist? I need to get on it. In 6th place, we have my deeply and dearly beloved Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. This was the year of Ali Hazelwood for me. I think I read a total of 6 Ali Hazelwood titles this year between novellas and novels, and I just like am delighted by her. As a girly who like was not obsessed with The Love Hypothesis, I'm so glad I've turned things around from my perspective on Ali. I just don't think there's anyone out there who is writing joyful novels in the way that Ali Hazelwood does. She does like Emily Henry writes these like heartfelt, warm, cozy novels. Allie Hazelwood writes these novels that are full of like humor and joy. Not that Emily Henry isn't funny, but like Emily Henry to me is like a warm hug. It's like a cozy, warm, like a perfect, delicious chai latte, okay? Allie Hazelwood is a glass of Prosecco, you know? I loved this one. This is one of my favorite Allie Hazelwoods probably ever. We are following a swimmer and a diver who are in college, so younger than we normally see in Allie's books, and they wind up in a romance because his girlfriend and him break up at the very beginning of the book, and his girlfriend is best friends with the diver, and the girlfriend tells the other two, she's like, I think you two should maybe hook up. You guys have some stuff in common, okay? So it kind of starts out with like a friends with benefits sort of situations, very quickly evolves from there. I just loved the dynamic between these two characters. I loved the journey our diver girly goes on throughout the book. She is dealing with like this mental block on this particular dive, and her journey through that like personal struggle is like really beautiful in the way her guy supports her through that, and I just like absolutely loved it. Like loved the dynamic between them, like ate it up with a spoon. I did read this one twice this year. I read this one like at the very beginning of the year. I think I read it in February, and I picked it up again when I just like needed something comforting in like October because I just like there is something really just like perfection about Deep End by Allie Hazelwood. In fifth place, we have one that's like kind of a little random, but I really loved it. It is John Proctor is The Villain by Kimberly Bellflower. This is actually a play. The only reason I picked this up is because I believe it was Carly's favorite book of last year, or one of her favorite books from last year, and it was so good. I did not have the chance to go to New York and see the play itself. Sadie Sink starred in the run. I don't know if it's still going on. I know Sadie has left, but I don't know if the play itself is over. Would love to go see it live. It is this play that takes place in the around 2010, maybe a little before, maybe a little after. I'm not. No, it's definitely after. It's definitely our maybe like 2015. Yes. It takes place around 2015-ish. We're following this group of high school girls as they read The Crucible. At the same time, like the larger social context is like the Me Too movement is happening, and there has been an incident in which someone in the town has been accused of, doing something inappropriate with teen girls. And it is about these young women kind of grappling with this and what this looks like when you know both kind of sides of the story. You know both the women who are doing the accusing and the accused, and perhaps you even have like a good relationship with the accused, and kind of like grappling with the complexities of this and like what it looks like to like support each other through this, and I think does a really beautiful job of delving into the complexities and the nuance of that sort of situation, and how like complex it can feel even when you like know like the right thing to do. I thought it was really beautiful. I did cry at the end. It's gorgeously done. What a beautiful play that I read. I didn't see it with my eyeballs, but I think it would be absolutely gorgeous to see with your eyeballs as well. I also haven't read The Crucible. If I had read The Crucible, maybe there's actually 3 books in my top 5 that revolve around a play that I have not read. This one being the first. I haven't read any of the plays, and they all like have deep connections to a play that I haven't read. Perfect. Okay. In fourth place, we have The Wedding People by Alison Esbach. I picked up this book because it was like the book on everybody's lips last summer. I feel like last summer, everyone and their mom literally was reading this book. And I was like, fine, I will give it a go. The premise of this book is we are following this woman who has decided to end her life. Her marriage has ended, and she is feeling like really stuck in her job. Like everything is just going poorly, and she says, you know what, I'm done. And she decides she's going to go to this like beautiful like oceanside resort to do so. She's always wanted to travel there. She hasn't been able to afford it, but she's like, you know what you can't bring with you into the afterlife? Credit card debt. And so she decides to book a vacation at this beautiful resort, and at the end of her vacation, end her life. She gets there, and she is the only guest there that is not part of this wedding party. She was like accidentally booked in. They had rented out the entire hotel for this like obviously like very expensive luxury wedding, and she meets the bride on like the first night she's there, and she tells the bride why she's there, and the bride is like, you cannot kill yourself, that would ruin my wedding. And it is just the story of this like wedding weekend and this woman getting to know like everyone, not everyone, but like a lot of people in this wedding party over the course of the wedding weekend. And the characters in this book are just like so beautifully done. They are all like so soft and vulnerable, and also like laugh out loud funny, and like messy people that have like lots of flaws, but also are just like, you can't help but to love them anyway. I think it is just like perfectly done. I finished this book and I like could think of not one single thing that I would have changed. I think Alison S. Bach did just like a beautiful job. I went into this book being a little bit of a hater. Okay, like before I opened it, I was like, I've like been pitched this book and it sounds super cheesy. Like, I don't know. And it like is, like the message is a little cheesy, but like sometimes you need a little cheese. And I think it is so well done. Like the book itself doesn't feel cheesy, even if the message at the center, which is like life is worth living, spoiler, is like a little cheesy. I think sometimes we need a little cheese, and two, when cheese is done this well, like who can complain? Not a soul. Would highly recommend this book. I think it is just like delightful. In third place, we have another absolutely stunningly written book in a very different way. This one is absolutely heart-wrenching. I read Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell this year. I read this book mostly in anticipation of the movie that just came out with Paul Mescal. I knew I wanted to read the book before I watched the movie, and this book has been on my list forever, and I am so glad I did. This book is so beautifully written. It is just like stunning, just like stunning. It won the Women's Prize in 2020, and like for good reason. What a feat. It is the story of Shakespeare's kind of like family life, and we are really following Shakespeare's wife Agnes and his children. We are following particularly Hamnet, the title character, and one of his only son, who is one who is like the youngest because he's part of a set of twins. You know, there's like an older sister and then the twins. And we're told the story of Hamnet, and at the very beginning, like this is before we even get into the novel, Maggie O'Farrell tells you that Hamnet dies. Like that is not a surprise. You know going into this book that Hamnet dies. And it is the story of one getting to that point. We like start kind of when William Shakespeare meets Agnes, the woman who will become his wife, and then kind of continues all the way through Shakespeare writing Hamlet. And it is just so breathtakingly beautifully written. It was heart-wrenching. Even though you know that Hamnet is going to die, oh my gosh, rip my heart out of my chest. The scenes around that and kind of like the family's grieving the loss of this young boy afterwards, I like literally could cry. The movie is also gorgeous. Paul Mescal and Jessie Buckley, who play William and Agnes, do such a gorgeous job. The child actors, brilliant, gorgeous, brilliant, fantastic. The little boy who plays Hamlet is such a cherub. His sweet baby face and those little cheeks, oh my god, he did such a gorgeous job. The child actors, my sister and I went and saw it over Christmas, and on the way home we were just talking about like how brilliant they were. I was like, we were talking, we're like, how do you even get like these like little kids? They're like, I don't know how old they would be, like 8, 11-ish, somewhere in that range. Like, how do you get them to like display grief so vividly and beautifully? Absolutely gorgeous. Would highly recommend. I've never read Hamlet by Shakespeare. I don't think you need to understand this book. I think this is a very accessible literary fiction if you want to like dip your toe into that world. I have been reading more literary fiction, and I find that I really enjoy literary fiction that is more emotional. I am like not into like a cool girl, like aloof, blasé literary fiction. Like I want a feeling. I want heart. I want warmth. That's what I want from my lit fiction. And Maggie O'Farrell, gorgeous, brilliant. Will be reading more from her. I read her memoir. Speaking of Maggie O'Farrell, I read her memoir years ago, which is called I Am. And it was also very gorgeous. So I should have expected no less from Maggie O'Farrell. But like truly brilliant, amazing, spectacular. What a feat. It was one of those books when I finished, I was like, wow, what a talent. Like, what a talent. In second place, we have our one and only nonfiction on this list, and this book is Doppelganger by Naomi Klein. This book is a little hard to describe because the starting point is not necessarily where we end up, but I will tell you the starting point. This book started from Naomi Klein, who is this journalist. She is a leftist journalist who writes a lot about global warming and like consumerism and those sorts of things, she kept getting mistaken for this other journalist named Naomi Wolf. And Naomi Wolf started her career as like a feminist writer. But over the past few years, particularly right around 2020, kind of veered towards the alt-right, became very like anti-vaccine, like I think almost like QAnon adjacent, like pretty like wild points of view, which as for Naomi Klein was troubling. This is her story of kind of like investigating like one, what happened to Naomi Wolf, like what took her from this like feminist writer to this like far right world. But through that, she like really explores like the larger political culture and like social culture that has been created particularly around 2020, but I think in the internet age and the social media age in general, and the way social media and the internet has made it easier to be an extremist in either direction, and how we create doppelgangers of ourselves, which are like doppelgangers are like exact mirror copies of ourselves in order to like exist in the internet and then in the real world. And also she kind of like brings in ideas of like doppelgangers throughout like literature. It is fantastic. I listened to the audiobook, would recommend the audiobook, but I think it would be equally as good physically. I just think it was such an insightful and thoughtful examination of like how we got to the current state that we're in. And it did come out in I think like 2022, 2023. So it's not like current in terms of like everything that has happened, but I still think it has like lots of interesting reflections that are still 100% valid and interesting today. I think if you read and enjoyed Trick Mirror by Gia Tolentino, I hope I'm saying her last name right, I think you would really enjoy this book. Not exactly the same. Like Gia Tolentino kind of comes at it from more like the feminine, like girl boss perspective and is a little earlier, but I think it's like kind of a continuation of like what internet culture is doing to us as a people. Loved, would highly recommend. And my absolute number one favorite book of the year. If you have been like around and following me closely, you probably know because I will be mentioning it in every video. Like I talk about it in my real life constantly. People are like, please leave us alone. That is Tom Lake by Anne Patchett. This book, I listened to the audiobook and I actually like listened to the audiobook all the way through. Loved it so much that I wasn't ready to leave. And so I just started it over, listened to it all the way through again. Like back to back. And I would have gone in for a third time, except I was like, girl, you gotta read something else. You gotta read something else. This book is perfection. I would highly recommend the audiobook if you listen to audiobooks at all. Meryl Streep does the audiobook, and because of the way the story is told, it's perfection. The book follows this mom and her 3 adult daughters who are home for the summer to help in the cherry orchard. They like live on her husband's like family cherry orchard, and it is the year of 2020, and so they're like down a lot of workers for this like harvest because of the pandemic, obviously. And so her 3 daughters are all home and they're all in their 20s. And the story follows her as they're like picking cherries. She is telling the story of this summer she had when she was in her early 20s, where she dated this man who would pretty immediately after she stopped dating him go on to be a famous movie star, like super duper A-list celebrity famous. And their mom dated him for a summer. They were in like summer stock theater together. They were in a play of Our Town, which again, I told you this book revolves around the play Our Town. Never read Our Town. Another book about a play that I haven't read. I don't know what it is about this book. It doesn't have like a super high rate. It's not low either, but it's got like a 3.9 on Goodreads, like, which is anything below a 4 is not like universally beloved. And there are a lot of comments that talk about how boring it is. And like, I guess you could think it was boring if you didn't enjoy just like goodness. I like am hesitant to recommend it broadly because if you don't like it, it will hurt my feelings. Like, please never tell me if you don't like it, because like Meryl Streep is my mother. I live in Tom Lake. Like, bury me in Traverse City, Michigan. I loved this book so much. I really think there is something really magical about it, and the way in which I was actually talking about it. I'm like working on my newsletter, which I'm sending out my top 5 books and like giving like a little bit more about why I enjoyed them so much. And I was talking about how this book feels to me like the antidote to Sylvia Plath's The Fig Tree. If you're not familiar, the fig tree metaphor comes from Sylvia Plath's novel, The Bell Jar. And this young woman talks about how she feels like she's just sitting in a fig tree, and she's like watching the figs are all different lives she could live, and she just like can't pick from them, and so she's watching them rot because she like can't make a choice about which life she wants to live. And this book seems like the antidote to that, because it's this woman reflecting back on her life and thinking that, like, of course this is the life she was supposed to live. Like, why would she want anything else? And her daughters are like, oh my gosh, you had this life where you could have almost been a movie star. Like, you can tell, like, multiple points throughout this, like, things could have gone just, like, one hair differently. And, like, this woman could have ended up, like, a famous movie star on the arm of, like, the hottest celebrity in all the world. And instead she's, like, picking cherries with her, like, teenage, or her 20-something daughters. And it's like a much quieter life. It's a much smaller life. And she's like, why would I want anything else? And it's just like, it's sheer perfection. I'm sure I'll be listening to it again. Honestly, if you get in my car anytime, you might just, Tom Lake might be on the radio. You know, there was that like TikTok trend that went around that was like, hey, would you mind if I like put something on to help me fall asleep? They're like, yeah. Mine is just Tom Lake. I'm just going to be listening to it all the time. Also made me think, like, I need to get my butt to Michigan, because the only other book that I've ever done this as, like, an adult, where I've, like, finished it and been like, no, I need to read that again, immediately, was Beach Read by Emily Henry, which also takes place in Michigan. And so I think I need to get my booty up to Michigan. So if you see me in Michigan, know that I'm in my happy place. I do love a lake. I've talked about this before. I, like, really am desperate to get to Lake Como from the Daisy Hates books. Now I need to get to Lake Michigan from these books. I have a deep fondness for lakes. Which is true. I actually do in real life have a fondness for lakes as well. And bodies of water. I'm an ocean girl as well. Okay. Hope this was helpful. I hope you found something on this list that sounds intriguing to you. Let me know what your favorite book of the year was and what you think I should read. If there's anything on your list that involves lakes, plays, what else? Vampires. Love a vampire. Let me know. I'm always looking for more books to read. This year I'm going to read 100, so don't worry. My TBR is 800 books long. I won't run out. But if you have some more options for me, let me know. I'm always looking for my next favorite book. I hope your 2026 is full of all sorts of new favorites for you. I will see you in the next video. Have a great rest of your day.